Okay, good afternoon. I think we're live. We'll wait a few minutes and let people log on. Hope everyone had a good day today. It was cold and relatively miserable out, but still a nice day. Well, no, it wasn't a nice day. I don't know why I said that. I hope you had a good day. We'll put it that way. We'll wait just a few more minutes and let people log on, and then we'll talk about Tweed. We'll talk about a stock that a viewer asked about us yesterday. Actually, it'd be nice to talk about non-strictly political stuff for the first time. Okay, so good afternoon. I'm Steve Mazzacane. This is the Steve Mazzacane podcast. I want to thank you for joining me. I also want to say thank you. Yesterday after the podcast, I don't know if there was anything special about the podcast yesterday or hit a nerve for some people or what have you, but we got quite a few really nice, almost heartfelt emails from people that are appreciating the discussion. I think sometimes when you have something that is like a regular schedule every day at 4 o'clock that you tune in, there's something comforting about that. And hopefully, that's a good thing. Where the emails we're getting are really, really positive. And so I appreciate that. And hopefully we can be a part of your day. And, you could do me a favor and help grow the audience. Tell your friends, share it on Facebook, tell others about it. And hopefully we can grow this. And my hope is that it becomes statewide in the near future. So I want to say thank you. The feedback has been phenomenal. And we'll go from there. But today, there's no massive political headlines. We will talk about Tweed or some news there with Piedmont Airlines pulling out. And I was actually an employee of Piedmont when I was 21 years old at Tweed, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But yesterday in the podcast, we talked a little bit about the stock market and the impact of that. And I firmly believe a huge proponent of financial literacy, of students understanding finance. In high school, I've talked to some of our local legislators about doing a potential bill that would start mandating actual finance lessons or classes or what have you in school. And I'm not talking about, really, really general terms. I'm talking about specific how to save money, the value of saving money, of setting priorities, what credit means, what the stock market is, what it means to buy a share of stock, what a P/E ratio is, what liquidity means, those types of terms. And so, in my view, it's political because it's the great equalizer. We're talking about certain people in economic groups can't get ahead. My theory has always been that we are sending students into the world, into a capitalist society, whether we like that or not, whether we're politically we're for it or not. There are rules to the game, and these kids don't know the rules. And it's not just out of high school, it's out of college as well. No idea how to buy a stock. And so in the last, I would say 3 or 4 years, there was a huge rise in companies like Robinhood, which are simpler versions of apps where you can put money in and buy stock. So now we have easier access to buy stock, but we have no real knowledge by the general public on what to do and what to look for and what are some red flags when you're buying them. People do know that I buy and sell and trade. I do something primarily called swing trading, but I do some day trading. I'll talk about that today. It's not my living. It is not something I get rich off of. In a perfect world, in 10 years, if I can manage to do that, I'd be thrilled. But it is just something that is part of my day. I watch the market. If something jumps out at me, I jump in. But yesterday on the podcast, good afternoon, Elizabeth and Fred. How are you? We had, I want to pull up that page. So hold on one second. They asked about a stock RVVTF. I want to make sure I have it right before I look into this and analyze it. So hold on one second here. Okay, so she asked me, look at RVVTF stock at your leisure. And so I took a quick look at it, but I figured I would go through the process of looking at it live, and we can talk about the process that I may go through and that the average person may go through when looking at a potential stock and what you would buy and what you may not buy. So when we look at RVVTF, it's a company called, and we'll do a basic Google search, Revive Therapeutics. It is not a large company by any means. It's relatively small. And that has some red flags in it. If we look at the market cap isn't even listed on Yahoo. Today it is it's closed at about 17 cents. It looks like it's had a high. It hit about 29 cents on July 31st. So I'm guessing there's a press release that we can equate to that. Back in 2018, it was 37 cents. It's not, this is a penny stock. So there's a couple of things that happen that we should know when we start talking about stocks when it comes to penny stocks. It's this. When stocks trade on NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange, there are minimum requirements for reporting and accuracy that they're required to keep. So if you're buying Amazon, Amazon has teams of people making sure the filing's correct, and they have people, accounting teams looking over them. It doesn't mean they don't have, large companies can't have significant issues. We had Enron, and most people remember what Enron did and the type of accounting, mark-to-market accounting with Arthur Andersen and all the nonsense that they did, destroying the lives of tens of thousands of employees and probably hundreds of thousands of investors. So you can still have somebody trading on NASDAQ or on the New York Stock Exchange and be corrupt and have problems, but you have higher standards for reporting on those. So if we have companies that are not on those, usually they don't hit minimum thresholds for the stock price. Usually if the stock falls below $2 or $3, it runs the risk of being delisted. Penny stocks are, if you remember the Wolf of Wall Street, that's what they were trading in. There was not always a ton of information on these companies. And so that made them ripe for manipulation. So before we even look at this specific stock, when we see a stock as being traded as a penny stock, there's some red flags there. Doesn't mean it's not a good company. There could be some good things about it, but there are going to be some issues there. So that's the first issue we're going to have with a penny stock. The reporting may not be great. Two, it's often very much open to manipulation. And how stocks are manipulated there are many, like Twitter, but there's also other sites that are financial based, give advice and articles and get headlines. In our social media age, there's so much false political news. There's also a lot of false financial news. But what people can do, and quite frankly, an individual can do this, is they can put out a series of press releases, fake articles, whatever, and talk about this thing is ripe for growth. And on the same day, 5 or 6 sites post these things. And the casual investor says, wow, it's a stock for 9 cents. And if it just goes up 2 or 3 cents, I can make a lot of money. It could double it. I can make real lot of money. And so you have casual investors jumping in, and the stock goes up, the stock goes up, the stock goes up. Well, just a few investors hold a lot and then suddenly sell it like crazy. And so you see a lot of people stuck with the stock. That's called bag holding. When you're stuck with a stock and you can't get rid of it, it's basically you're holding the bag. So it's a huge target when they're not on those major exchanges for manipulation. The third red flag, look at a stock like this, is liquidity. And liquidity is simply this. Will I be able to sell the stock when I want to? And if you're wondering what that means, so a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago or so, there was a big rush on Kodak. If you remember, Kodak was given a grant by the US government to do some new thing. And the stock went crazy. Like people were buying just an absurd number. In fact, if you want to look at this, if you want to have a lot of fun, go on Google and just Google Kodak stock. And if you look in the last 6 months, and if you want to see this chart, it's unbelievable. It was on July 27th, $2.62. On July 29th, 2 days later, it was $33.20. And the next, by August 3rd, it was $14.94, 33 to $14.94. It dropped back down again, and today it traded at $6.73. So this is one of those stocks that news came out, everybody went crazy on the stock. And then when it got to that high, $33.20, people started selling off. And when that happens, everybody wants to sell this stock, and there's not enough buyers for the stock as it's going down. And so a lot of people end up being bag holders. If you sold at the top, great, you made a fortune. But a lot of people, especially casual investors, stuck with the stock as it's going down, clicking the sell button, and they could not get it to go. So the risk you run is liquidity when it comes to a lot of these stocks that can be easily manipulated. So there's some red flags even without looking at this stock. So then we go to the stock itself. And apparently, from what I can see, They're looking at some sort of CBD related treatment and they put the word COVID in there. Now, I'll tell you this. Right now, putting COVID in anywhere is key, right? Everybody wants to be in the potential cure for COVID. So every press release is going to say, here we have this product. Oh, we're researching it potentially for COVID or to solve COVID. That's kind of the keyword. That's the thing everybody's doing right now to get money into the stock. So there's a lot of red flags with this stock. And I'm glad you brought this up. I forgot who actually posted this. I'm going to look in a second. But, you know, I like looking at stocks, but this is the process we have to go through if we're going to be a smart investor, is where are we trading? On what platform? If we're not on NASDAQ, or if we're not on the New York Stock Exchanges, we're not on the big ones that have significant reporting requirements, does this make a smart move? We have liquidity issues here. We have information issues. Is the information accurate? Are they just jumping on the hype of some recent news like COVID? Now, it does seem the FDA did approve them for one phase 3 study on one drug. We just don't know the size of that market. So there's a lot of red flags here. Can you take a chance? And maybe they end up finding some cure for COVID and you buy it 17 cents and it's a $5 stock in a month or two. Highly unlikely. If it's 1 or 2% of your portfolio overall and you want to take a risk, okay. I'm not suggesting that. I'm not buying it. I'm not giving you any stock. But in general, I like to stick, and I'll just give you my strategy. I stick to tried and true companies. And I look for times when they are what I would say is oversold. So if I believe a company should be trading at $50, if for some reason it trades down to 45, I want to buy it, wait for it to come back up. It's a solid company. It's not going to zero, that sort of thing. And I'll give you some examples. So to those who follow my personal Facebook feed, you may have seen last Friday I posted that you should buy CVS. It's my reason to buy CVS. Primarily, I think that should be a $75, $80 stock. It was trading in the high 50s, and a bunch of things converged. I think CVS is a phenomenal company. They converged with an insurance company, Anthem or Aetna, I'm not sure. I think it's Anthem. No, it might be Aetna. In any event, this idea that you can have an insurance company and small healthcare facilities in each CVS is the future, in my opinion. Instead of going to the emergency room, you can go there and get a prescription for things, get your stuff at the same place. There's also this idea that the stock has stayed low because of Amazon. So a lot of the things you can buy at CVS, you can also buy at Amazon, right? You can get a lot of prescriptions at Amazon. You can get ginger ale from Amazon. You can get all the stuff, paper towels, whatever that you're going to buy at CVS, your vitamins, you can also get on Amazon. My thought process was most people who were sick aren't going to wait for Amazon. So I think their stores will be fine. I think their prescription business will be fine. I think connecting with the insurance company was brilliant. So I bought a bunch of it at, I think, 60. I added to it at 58, added to it at 57. My average entry was $57. I encourage people on my personal page to buy some more. It is now 69. It traded up to 70. I sold at 67. Once I had $10 in profit on the stock, I did not have 10,000 shares. I didn't make a fortune on it. But my thought process is I want to trade the right way so that in 5, 6, 10 years, if I'm a full-time trader, I have those habits. So in short, I'm not giving you any stock advice here, but I would stay away from a penny stock. There are ways to make money that is much, much safer. And if you've saved money, invested in the market, treat that with respect. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It can't be. If you want to take a small percentage of the money you have and take a chance on something, so be it. If you know somebody, I'm not saying inside information, but you're friends with a guy who cleans the place, okay, great. But be careful. I, in the past, have made the mistake buying some penny stocks, and you find out it's like some guy in an office somewhere, nothing really is going on. So, but I appreciate you bringing that up because it shows you what happens in our market. We have good companies, and good companies can be manipulated. But underneath those good companies are tens of thousands of small companies. If you saw Wolf of Wall Street, that's true. That stuff happens. And how it happens now is the same way it happens with political news. You talk about Facebook and Twitter and Instagram sharing all these fake political stories. That happens in the stock market every single day. You can look up a stock that no one's ever heard of and find it trending for some reason. And it's trending because this company has found a way to get 8 different press releases out on pseudo realistic platforms. So it may not be on CNN or CNBC, could be on something much, much smaller. So suddenly it just starts showing up in Twitter feeds. And so now you have energy. And so you have stock pickers in the morning saying to themselves, whoa, there's some interest in this stock. Something's going on here. Let me jump in. And the stock may go up. And if they're in and they take their profit out, they may do fine, but it goes up and it goes up and it goes up and it goes up. And suddenly one huge, huge shareholder says, all right, I made my money. I'm gone. They sell like crazy. And so if you're that casual investor, 10,000 shares, maybe you spent a couple $1,000s on 17 cents a share, whatever it is, you don't have anybody to sell it to. There's no liquidity. And you're sitting at the screen yelling, sell, 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 sell. You're pushing that button over and over and over again, and nobody's buying. And that's can happen when you are stuck in especially in a penny stock. It can happen otherwise too. And on beginning of March, when COVID happened and that huge drop off, it was hard to sell some stocks. You had to watch. You were losing money as it dropped down before you had a buyer. But at least in those solid stocks, they've all come back. Amazon dropped and Netflix dropped and all the big ones dropped. They've all bounced back. A penny stock may never happen. So there are stocks out there that are penny stocks. And one day you'll see 30 million shares traded. The next day, 5,000. Because somebody was manipulating it. They're buying it like crazy. They're hoping some schmucks got in, then it dropped. I'm not saying this stock is that. But those are the red flags that come up when we look at stocks like this. And it's important to know this is the underbelly of the stock market. The same thing that happens in politics, the same fake news, the same conspiracy theories happens every day in the stock market. That's why our personal standards for the information we take in needs to be so high. We need to double check and triple check and quadruple check everything we're taking in, especially when our vote, which is valuable, or our money is at risk. So the same thing is true in both of those. But thank you for bringing that up. And I'd be glad to talk about any other stocks, but more importantly than talking about a specific stock is the process we go through to take in information. When we see, what's the conspiracy theory, QAnon or something like that, of pedophiles in Washington or something, it's not, we're going to see it in 10 different places and it's going to trend. It's going to be on Twitter and it's going to be on Facebook. And we're going to say, wait a minute, it's all over the place. It must be legitimate. Doesn't mean it is. Just people like to start stuff. When it comes to stocks, people like to start stuff. And there are companies or people that can be hired. It's illegal, but it happens to put out this false information and push this stuff on social media and push fake articles out there saying, this thing that had no connection to COVID suddenly has a connection to COVID and it could potentially turn into a multi-million-dollar thing. Can it? I guess. I'm not willing to take that chance, and that's not a chance I suggest most people take on penny stocks. And I think most people, financially and fiscally savvy people would tell you the same thing. But the similarities are areas on how we take in political information and how we take in financial information. The other thing I want to talk about today is Tweed. And Tweed announced yesterday that Piedmont Airlines, which is one of the smaller airline subsidiaries of larger airlines, is out. So there are no flights, commercial flights, taking place at Tweed right now. And so one of the people who worked there for the longest time, her name was Diane. He was there when I'm 42. I think at age 20 or 21, I worked for Piedmont Airlines. It was a really cool job. At Tweed, we had to bring the airlines in, send them out in the morning. The first flight was 6 and 6:15. The two flights that we had flights to Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia. The last flight was 10:30. Some nights we'd sleep at the airport because we had the closing flight, and the next day we had to clean out the planes at night. So we had a ton of they had packages of Milano cookies and peanuts. We got those like crazy. And so, I hate when I see those people. Diane has been here all those years. She's still working there. I'm guessing she lost her job as part of this shutdown and these layoffs. but she did me a just massive favor when I was 20 or 21. One of the benefits of working for an airline is you got free flights, and you had to be on standby, so you had to be careful which flights you took, but you got free flights, were on standby, and as long as you did not miss a shift while you were away, you kept those privileges. You had them for yourself and you had them for your family. The family might have had like a 10% charge of them, but all standby. So when I was, I believe, 21, me and a friend went to Seattle. I was dating a girl out there, or met her out there, or whatever. And we were there for about 10 days. And coming back, the airport was crazy. We could not get on a flight. And we ended up sleeping at the airport, waiting for it for the next day. Ended up taking a flight down to LA, and then doing an LA overnight to Bradley. In any event, I missed a shift, and stupidly could have called any worker I worked with. Did not do it to cover me, and I missed a shift. So I would then lose my privileges to fly again. And the problem is about a month after that, my parents had already planned, using those privileges, a flight to Italy. And so I remember going home, and I was told that I couldn't use those privileges anymore. I think I was 20, and I went to my parents' house and I said, "Listen, I don't know that you're going to get these, be able to go." And my mother lost her mind, and I think it was this trip had been planned. It was everything, and I went to Diane and I explained the whole situation, and she goes, "Well, we'll see." And I think a few days later, she called me and said, "All right, they can go and take care of it." And it was like this huge, massive weight off of me. She did. She was like the nicest person on the planet, incredibly helpful, and I was able to get my parents flights to Italy and back for free. So a huge favor that she did, and hearing the news that they were shutting down is significant. Sean Scanlon I heard reported that they're talking with another airline to hopefully come in there, but Tweed has never been, a massive airline, but it could be, or airport, but it absolutely could be. With Yale here, with all the industry we have going on in this area, it should be the airport that we look to grow in this area. The connection of 91 and 95. I know there's been some discussions about Bridgeport that makes no sense. New Haven makes far more sense. Bridgeport doesn't have Yale. Never mind the hospital, but also the university. And all of that traffic coming in, it makes a ton of sense. It could be a huge boost to the economy if the state makes Tweed a priority. But for today, it was just sad to see someone who has been there for so long lose their job, and all those workers lose their job. And the day that we did, I think 6 to 8 flights a day. And Piedmont were the puddle jumpers. They were the little ones. So it's just kind of a sad day seeing that come to an end. And hopefully Sean Scanlon, as our state rep, is also the executive director of Tweed Airport. Hopefully he's successful in getting them back there. So, okay, that's all I have for today, guys. I wanted to talk about the market. I'm just glad to have a podcast where we're not just talking about the race. I don't know what Trump is doing. Biden's going full steam ahead with his transition team. COVID numbers are going up, and we'll talk about all this stuff on Monday. But at the end of the day, Kathy, I heard Oxford is good too for an airport. Well, think about transportation and the ways to get there. Oxford's up Route 8, a little bit out of the way for the airport itself. And New Haven is the exchange for 91 and 95. So I look at New Haven as a much better option than Oxford. But, the question is, can they get a longer airfield and that sort of thing? I think we solved that problem with the most recent ruling that Tweed won. But look, the state has to look at all their options. And the governor and the elected officials never want to say no to anybody, right? They want to make sure everybody feels like they have hope. But I think Tweed is the best shot. And I'm biased because I live here, but you have Yale right here. Not a whole lot of people want to be in Oxford. There are people who want to be in New Haven, especially for work. So we don't know what post-COVID will look like, but it looks like I would say Tweed makes the most sense in the state to get that second major airport and use the airport we have. It's a nice little airport. It's so easy to get to in and out of. All right, guys, I want you to have a great weekend. I thank you for joining me. We missed one day. We had 3 podcasts this week, and the feedback is just phenomenal. It means a lot. I appreciate it. We'll be back on Monday, probably talking about some whatever political headlines happen over the weekend. But we also want to start talking about finance and some of the other issues, and also just news headlines, things that happen. We've talked about Black Lives Matter. We talked about those rallies. We want to get away from just the nonstop news we had on politics for obviously the last month and a half or so. Guys, have a great weekend. I look forward to seeing you on Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great night.